She scoffed, "I can do whatever I want," when I asked about her weekend with her gym buddy. I agreed, and did whatever I wanted too, changed the locks, canceled our joint accounts, and blocked her number before she even landed. Sometimes the universe has a twisted sense of humor about timing, and last Friday morning proved that beyond any doubt. I discovered Riley's secret weekend plans through LinkedIn of all places, scrolling during my lunch break when Cameron's post popped up in my feed. Her personal trainer had tagged her at Moonstone Wellness Spa in Sedona with the caption, "Amazing weekend retreat with this incredible soul." The photo showed them in matching yoga poses against a sunset backdrop, looking far too comfortable for what Riley had told me was a professional fitness certification weekend. I stared at my phone screen, feeling that familiar sinking sensation when something doesn't add up. Moonstone Wellness Spa wasn't some fitness conference center. I'd looked it up before. It was an exclusive couples retreat specializing in relationship therapy and tantric healing sessions, the kind of place that charged $400 per night and marketed itself as a sanctuary for romantic reconnection. When I got home that evening, Riley was packing her weekend bag with unusual care, folding clothes I'd never seen her wear to the gym. "So tell me about this certification program," I said, watching her carefully select matching lingerie. "What kind of credentials are you getting?" Her response came too quickly, rehearsed. "It's advanced biomechanics and holistic movement therapy. Very technical stuff. You'd probably find it boring." The way she avoided eye contact while saying it made my stomach tighten. "At a couple's spa in Sedona?" I asked. "That seems like an unusual venue for biomechanics training." Her entire demeanor shifted in an instant, defensive walls slamming into place. "It's not a couple's spa, Jason. It's a wellness center that happens to offer relationship programs alongside fitness education." God, you're always so suspicious about everything I do. But I'd done my research during the afternoon, and Moonstone's website made their focus crystal clear. Every package description mentioned romantic healing, couples meditation, and intimate connection workshops. There wasn't a single mention of fitness certifications or biomechanics training anywhere on their site. "Riley, I looked at their website. They don't offer any fitness certifications. It's exclusively couples retreat programming." The mask slipped completely then, her face flushing with caught red-handed anger. "You looked up where I'm going? You checked up on me like I'm some kind of criminal? This is exactly why I need space to breathe, Jason. You're suffocating me with your constant need to monitor everything I do." The deflection was textbook manipulation, turning her deception into my fault for discovering it. "I'm not monitoring you. I'm trying to understand why you lied about where you're spending the weekend." "I didn't lie about anything. I said I was going to a wellness retreat for professional development. That's exactly what it is. With your personal trainer. To a couples spa. For biomechanics training that doesn't exist." My voice remained calm, but inside I felt something fundamental shifting, like watching a building's foundation crack in real time. Cameron is a professional colleague, and this is a professional opportunity. I can't help it if you're too insecure to trust me. She grabbed her bag and headed for the door, then turned back with venom in her voice. "You know what, Jason? I can do whatever I want. I'm a grown woman, and I don't need your permission or approval for my career development." The front door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows, leaving me standing alone in our bedroom surrounded by the aftermath of her defensive fury. She spent that night in our home office, claiming she needed space to think, but I heard her on the phone until past midnight, voice too low for me to make out words. The next morning, I discovered why she'd been so secretive about her conversations when I found her tablet forgotten on the kitchen counter, still logged into her messaging apps. What I found in those conversations made the couple's spa deception look like a minor detail in a much larger betrayal that had been unfolding right under my nose for months. The tablet revealed 6 months of intimate conversations between Riley and Cameron that made my blood run cold, starting with innocent workout discussions that gradually evolved into emotional intimacy and eventually explicit planning for secret rendezvous. I scrolled through message after message, watching their relationship develop in real time while I'd been completely oblivious to what was happening. "You understand me in ways Jason never could," Riley had written in March. He's so focused on his code and his logic that he misses the emotional complexity of real human connection. Cameron's responses encouraged her complaints about me, positioning himself as her emotional savior. You deserve someone who appreciates your depth and passion. Life's too short to settle for comfort when you could have magic. The conversations revealed previous secret meetings I'd never suspected, luxury hotel encounters Riley had disguised as work events, private training sessions at his apartment when she'd claimed to be at the gym, weekend trips I'd thought were girls' retreats that were actually romantic getaways funded by our joint accounts. Last night was incredible. She'd texted after what I now realized was the weekend in February when she'd supposedly gone to a wellness conference in Santa Fe with her friend Jessica. I've never felt so alive, so seen, so desired. Coming home to Jason after being with you feels like returning to black and white after experiencing color. Reading those words felt like taking a physical blow, each message revealing how thoroughly she'd compartmentalized our relationship while building something intimate and passionate with someone else. The financial trail was equally devastating: receipts for expensive dinners at restaurants I couldn't afford, spa treatments that cost more than my monthly car payment, weekend getaways to luxury resorts, all charged to credit cards linked to our joint account. She'd been using my money to fund her affair while complaining to Cameron about feeling financially restricted in our relationship. Jason's so controlling about money, she'd written. He wants to budget everything instead of just living spontaneously. You make me feel free to enjoy beautiful experiences without constant calculations and compromise. The irony was crushing. She'd been using my financial stability to fund experiences with another man while characterizing my responsibility as controlling behavior. Cameron played his role perfectly, encouraging her to live authentically and not settle for mediocrity, while positioning our stable relationship as a prison she needed to escape. You're too vibrant for someone who wants to plan everything and minimize risk, he'd written. Life is about passion and adventure, not spreadsheets and 5-year plans. The emotional manipulation was textbook, but seeing it laid out in months of conversations made me realize how systematically Riley had been rewriting our relationship history to justify her betrayal. Every disagreement, every moment of practical discussion about our future, every time I tried to build something stable with her had been reframed as evidence that I was wrong for her. The messages from the past week showed their weekend planning in explicit detail, with Riley expressing excitement about finally having uninterrupted time together without having to sneak around or make excuses. I can't wait to wake up next to you without having to rush home to maintain appearances, she'd written Thursday night. This feels like the beginning of our real relationship, not just stolen moments between my obligations to Jason. Cameron had responded with equal enthusiasm about their romantic adventure and suggested they use the weekend to figure out next steps for their relationship. The final message, sent Friday morning just hours before she'd confronted me about my suspicious questions, revealed the depth of her planning. Jason's getting suspicious about the spa, but I handled it. After this weekend, I'll figure out how to transition things with him. You've shown me what I've been missing, and I can't go back to settling for less than extraordinary. Sitting in our apartment Friday night, I realized with crystal clarity that I'd been financially subsidizing Riley's affair for months without even knowing it, paying 85% of our $2,400 monthly rent while she contributed a token $360, covering all utilities that averaged $280 monthly, her $150 personal training sessions with Cameron that were apparently more personal than training, her $420 luxury car lease payment, her $85 phone plan, and her health insurance through my tech company benefits. Worth another $340 monthly. The numbers were staggering when I calculated them objectively. I was covering roughly $2,800 of our combined monthly expenses while Riley contributed less than $600, despite her wellness blog generating decent income that she claimed needed to be reinvested in her personal brand development. Her income disappeared into what she called self-care investments and professional growth opportunities that I now understood included funding romantic getaways with her trainer while I handled the actual responsibilities of adult life. I spent the evening going through our financial records with the methodical precision that came from my cybersecurity background, documenting every shared expense, every joint account, every financial obligation that connected our lives. The pattern was undeniable. Riley lived like someone with my income while contributing like someone making minimum wage, using her actual earnings for discretionary spending that apparently included affair maintenance. Saturday morning, I watched from our bedroom window as Cameron's black Tesla pulled up to our building, observing Riley practically skip to his car with an overnight bag and the kind of excited energy she hadn't shown around me in months. The way she kissed him goodbye before getting in, hand lingering on his chest, told me everything I needed to know about the true nature of their professional relationship. They drove away toward their romantic weekend while I stood in the apartment I'd been paying for, surrounded by furniture I'd bought, looking at the life I'd been funding for someone who saw me as nothing more than a reliable financial foundation for her actual desires. The betrayal wasn't just emotional anymore. It was financial, systematic, and had been going on far longer than I'd imagined possible. While Riley believed she was successfully managing both relationships, maintaining her secure home base while exploring passion elsewhere, I began planning my response with the same analytical approach I used for cybersecurity threats. I opened my laptop and created detailed spreadsheets of every shared asset, every joint account, every financial obligation that connected us, methodically planning how to extract myself from a relationship that had become a one-sided financial arrangement disguised as partnership. The irony wasn't lost on me that she'd complained to Cameron about my controlling approach to money while using that same money to fund her betrayal. I researched tenant rights, documented the affair evidence from her tablet, screenshotted the financial records showing the disparity in our contributions, and began the process of protecting myself legally and financially from someone who demonstrated she had no problem exploiting my trust for her benefit. By Saturday evening, I had a comprehensive plan that would remove Riley from every aspect of my financial life while she was enjoying her romantic spa weekend, believing she could continue manipulating both relationships indefinitely. The woman who declared she could do whatever she wanted was about to discover that actions have consequences, and that the stable foundation she'd taken for granted wasn't something she was entitled to maintain while building her future with someone else. I spent Sunday morning implementing the first phase of my plan, starting with a call to our credit card companies to report suspicious activity and freeze the accounts, followed by transferring my contributions from our joint savings and checking accounts while leaving only her minimal deposits behind. Over the weekend, I executed a comprehensive dismantling of every shared financial and legal connection we had, working through my carefully prepared checklist with methodical precision while Riley enjoyed her romantic spa retreat completely unaware that her safety net was disappearing in real time. I started by calling my company's HR department to remove Riley from my health insurance effective immediately, explaining that our domestic partnership had ended and providing the required documentation, which would save the company $340 monthly and leave Riley without coverage starting Monday. Next, I contacted our cell phone provider to cancel Riley's line from my family plan, transferring her number to a prepaid account with just enough credit for a few days of service, effectively cutting off her primary means of communication while giving her a brief window to make alternative arrangements. The locksmith arrived Sunday afternoon while Riley was still in Sedona, changing every lock on our apartment and providing me with documentation of the service for my records, since her name wasn't on the lease and she had no legal right to access the property without my permission. I spent the afternoon systematically packing all of Riley's belongings into labeled boxes, including expensive jewelry I'd bought her for birthdays and holidays, designer clothes she'd purchased with money from our joint accounts, and personal items that represented 3 years of a relationship I now understood had been largely fictional on her part. My insurance agent was remarkably efficient when I called to remove Riley from my auto policy, explaining that she'd been listed as an occasional driver but owned no vehicle registered under the policy, making her removal straightforward and immediate. Going through our credit card statements revealed the full scope of Riley's deception: charges at luxury restaurants on nights she'd claimed to be working late, expensive gifts I'd never seen her give to anyone, hotel bookings for dates that coincided with her supposed girls' weekends, and recurring charges at Cameron's gym that went far beyond standard personal training rates. I photographed everything, creating a comprehensive record of how our joint finances had been used to fund her affair while she contributed minimally to our actual shared expenses. The apartment lease presented a more complex challenge, but since Riley had never been added as an official tenant and had only contributed token amounts toward rent, my property management company confirmed that removing her belongings and changing the locks was within my rights as the sole leaseholder. I drafted a formal notice documenting the end of our domestic partnership and her voluntary departure from the premises, having it notarized and keeping copies for potential legal protection. By Sunday evening, I had effectively erased Riley from every financial system, legal document, and shared obligation that had connected our lives, while maintaining detailed documentation of the affair evidence and financial disparities that justified my actions. The woman who declared her independence from my controlling oversight was about to discover that independence meant losing access to the financial stability she'd taken for granted while building her future elsewhere. I arranged for the building manager to hold Riley's packed belongings in storage and provide her with my formal notice upon her return, ensuring she'd understand immediately that her living situation had fundamentally changed during her romantic weekend. The final step was researching tenant rights and domestic partnership laws to ensure I'd followed proper procedures, confirming that Riley's minimal financial contributions and lack of legal standing as a tenant protected me from any potential retaliation or claims of wrongful eviction. While Riley was enjoying what she believed would be the beginning of her transition away from our relationship on her terms, I was systematically ensuring that transition would happen immediately and completely on mine. Riley returned Sunday evening to find herself completely locked out of the apartment building, standing on the sidewalk with her weekend bag while the doorman explained that her access had been revoked and her belongings were waiting in storage with the building manager, who handed her my formal notice terminating our domestic partnership effective immediately. The look of shock and disbelief on her face was visible through the lobby windows as she read the document, probably expecting to return home to business as usual while planning her gradual transition to Cameron on her timeline rather than mine. Her first call went straight to voicemail because I'd blocked her number on everything, followed by increasingly frantic attempts to reach me through social media accounts she discovered were also blocked, forcing her to rely on friends' phones to send desperate messages that I deleted without reading. What she didn't know was that Cameron had already begun distancing himself during their spa weekend, apparently realizing that Riley becoming available meant losing the excitement of a forbidden affair and gaining the complications of an actual relationship with someone who expected financial support. My building's doorman, who'd always been friendly with me, mentioned that he'd noticed Riley bringing different men to the apartment when I traveled for work, usually late at night and always when my car wasn't in the parking garage, suggesting her betrayal extended far beyond just Cameron and had been going on much longer than even the messages revealed. "I thought maybe you had an open arrangement or something," he said awkwardly, "but when you asked me to revoke her access, I figured things weren't what they seemed." The neighbors I'd barely spoken to in 3 years suddenly became chatty, with Mrs. Rodriguez from down the hall mentioning she'd seen Riley arguing with a man outside the building several times, and the college students next door admitting they'd heard heated phone conversations through our shared wall at odd hours. Riley's sister called me Tuesday evening, furious about having to deal with Riley's breakdown and demanding to know why I'd thrown her out without warning. But when I explained about the affair and sent her screenshots of the financial records showing Riley's minimal contributions versus my subsidizing of her lifestyle, the conversation ended abruptly. "I told her she was taking advantage of you," her sister admitted quietly before hanging up. "She said you were happy to pay for things because it made you feel important." I guess I know who was telling the truth now. The cascade of consequences accelerated when Riley discovered that Cameron had immediately pulled back once she became fully available, claiming he'd thought they were just having fun and never intended to leave his actual girlfriend, who apparently knew about his clients, but drew the line at him actually leaving her for one of them. Riley's desperate voicemails, left from borrowed phones after she discovered her own service had been terminated, revealed the full scope of her panic as reality crashed down around her. "Jason, please call me back. Cameron says he needs space to figure things out. I can't reach you, I can't get into the apartment, my phone doesn't work, and I don't understand what's happening. I know I made mistakes, but we can fix this. Please don't throw away 3 years over one weekend." The irony was perfect. She'd spent months planning her transition away from me, but when the moment came, she wanted to control the timeline and terms, maintaining her safety net while exploring other options, never considering that I might have my own plans for how our relationship would end. By Wednesday, mutual friends were reporting that Riley was staying on various couches, unable to afford her own place without the financial foundation I'd provided, while Cameron had blocked her on social media and canceled her training sessions, apparently moving on to his next client affair without looking back. The woman who'd declared she could do whatever she wanted discovered that actions have consequences, and that the stability she'd taken for granted while building her escape plan wasn't something she could access once she'd burned the bridge that provided it. 3 months later, I'd completely transformed my life in ways I never expected, losing 20 pounds through rock climbing at the local gym, earning a promotion to senior cybersecurity analyst with a substantial raise, and beginning to date Brooke, an adventure travel business owner I'd met on a weekend camping trip who insisted on splitting every dinner check and paying for her own gear when we went hiking together. Riley somehow obtained my new number through mutual friends and called one evening while Brooke and I were cooking dinner together, her voice breaking as she begged for reconciliation and claimed the affair had been just emotional support during a confusing time rather than the systematic betrayal I'd documented. "Jason, I made terrible mistakes, but what we had was real," she sobbed into the phone while Brooke continued chopping vegetables, respectfully giving me space to handle my past. "Cameron was just a fantasy, an escape from reality. You were my partner, my home, my future. I've learned my lesson and I want to fix this." Her desperation was palpable, but I felt only distant sympathy for someone who'd gambled away something stable for excitement that evaporated the moment it became real. "Riley, this was never about the physical affair," I said calmly. "This was about you systematically lying to me for months, using our joint finances to fund your betrayal, and treating me like a convenience rather than a partner you respected." The conversation revealed how little she understood about the actual problem, as she continued to frame her behavior as a momentary lapse in judgment rather than the calculated deception it had actually been. "I was confused about what I wanted, but I know now that I want us," she pleaded. "You can't throw away 3 years because I made one mistake. People work through affairs all the time. We can get counseling, rebuild trust, start fresh." Brooke looked up from her cooking and mouthed, "You okay?" with genuine concern, representing everything Riley had never been, someone who checked on my emotional state without making it about herself. "I've moved on, Riley. I'm with someone who values partnership over convenience, someone who contributes equally to our relationship instead of treating me like a financial safety net." The silence on Riley's end stretched for nearly a minute before she spoke again, voice thick with the realization that I wasn't just angry but actually gone. "You're seeing someone else already? After everything we built together?" The irony of her shock at my moving on while she'd been building another relationship for months wasn't lost on me. "What we built was you taking advantage of my generosity while planning your exit strategy. That's not something worth rebuilding." Brooke walked over and squeezed my shoulders supportively, a simple gesture that demonstrated the kind of natural partnership I'd never experienced with Riley, who would have made my phone call about her emotional needs rather than offering comfort during a difficult conversation. "She seems really upset," Brooke said quietly after I hung up. "Are you sure you're completely over that relationship?" The question came from genuine care rather than jealousy, showing the secure attachment style that made our relationship feel fundamentally different from the manipulation and drama I'd accepted as normal with Riley. "I'm sure," I said, realizing as I spoke that it was completely true. What we had was real for me, but it was never real for her. She was auditioning replacements while keeping me as backup. That's not love. 6 months later, Brooke and I moved into a mountain cabin we were purchasing jointly, both our names on the mortgage and all expenses shared equally based on our comparable incomes, creating the kind of genuine partnership I'd never experienced with someone who viewed relationships as financial arrangements rather than emotional connections. Riley had relocated to Portland for what she called a fresh start, but mutual friends reported she was struggling professionally after her wellness blog collapsed when clients learned about her personal scandal and questioned her credibility as a relationship and lifestyle advisor. Cameron lost his personal training certification after multiple complaints from female clients who discovered his pattern of pursuing intimate relationships under the guise of professional services, leaving him scrambling to rebuild his career in a different field entirely. My parents, who'd always been politely distant with Riley, were thrilled about Brooke and admitted they'd never trusted my ex-girlfriend's motivations, with my mom commenting that I seemed genuinely happy for the first time in years rather than constantly stressed about money and relationship drama. Riley always made everything about her, my dad observed during a family dinner where Brooke naturally helped with dishes and engaged in actual conversation rather than scrolling through social media. This one asks about your work, remembers what you tell her, and treats you like an equal instead of a provider. The contrast was stark when I reflected on how different my life had become. No more walking on eggshells around someone's emotional volatility, no more justifying reasonable financial decisions to someone who saw my income as her discretionary fund, no more wondering whether my partner actually enjoyed my company or just tolerated it for the benefits it provided. Brooke and I shared camping gear, split gas money for road trips, and took turns planning and paying for date nights, creating a relationship based on mutual respect rather than financial dependency disguised as love. The final vindication came when I learned through our old landlord that Riley had tried to claim tenant rights to our former apartment, demanding access to retrieve personal property she claimed I'd stolen, only to discover that her minimal financial contributions and lack of legal standing meant she had no claim to anything we'd shared. Her declaration that she could do whatever she wanted had ultimately freed me to discover what I actually deserved. A partner who chose to be with me rather than someone who needed to be with me for financial security. Today, I wake up in a home I genuinely share with someone who contributes equally to our life together, someone who sees our relationship as a team effort rather than a transaction, and I realize that Riley's betrayal was the best thing that ever happened to me because it forced me to stop accepting less than I was worth and start building something real with someone who actually wanted to build it with me.